Hi, everyone. Welcome back to the Wonder of Anime podcast. I'm your host, Lisa, and this is a weekly, sometimes bi weekly episode podcast about anime. And I am so excited to have this guest on today that we have been talking about doing this recording since Anime NYC. And we finally got it together. We meaning me, because I was the one slacking. I am so excited to have this guest. We've been talking about recording this episode since Anime NYC, and it's always my favorite part when I talk to a guest and I'm like, tell them the premise of the podcast, and immediately they have an anime they want to talk about, because that lets me know I am talking to the expert. I'm talking to the biggest fan. So this week I am joined by Klaudia. Klaudia is the co-host of the Mystery Spotcast, a supernatural rewatch podcast, producer of the Anime by the Numbers newsletter, and an entertainment strategy consultant. You probably know of her from her JJK TikToks, though, which it's funny because I have seen a lot of your TikToks and only the BL ones come up for me, but that's probably because I'm the BL person. So I didn't know you had JJK TikToks, but every day I learn new things. But welcome to the show, Claudia.
Hello. Thank you for having me. Yeah,
So happy that you're here.
For the people who are watching for the video in the back, I have a big Sailor Moon light in the back, but we're not talking about Sailor Moon today, which is the irony here. So
But I love it. That's such a cute lamp, though, too.
yeah, I got it from a Ukrainian Etsy seller. So
Oh, that is so.
yeah.
Listen, I need to be on Etsy more. I'm very excited to have you here. And I always like to start asking my guests, like, what was your journey into anime slash manga? Like, how did you become a weeb?
Yeah, so mine is a little non-traditional. For context, I was not allowed to watch anything that wasn't public television when I was a kid. So I was not one of the like Toonami kids. I even didn't watch Avatar: The Last Airbender until I got into high school. I think when it hit Netflix like the first time. So I was behind on certain things, but I was introduced to anime and manga the Latin American way, which is through a pirated DVD of an OVA that nobody else watches, that was not really appropriate for me as a kid. My older brother, who is now, he works in tech, but he was a graphic designer, he's an artist, him and his wife, when he came to visit one time when I was a kid, he brought the original OVA of Oh My Goddess, which was actually my first anime. And you're like, Oh My Goddess was your first anime? Yeah. It's not that it's actually that inappropriate. I've actually rewatched some of it now, and I'm like, it's actually remarkably fine. It's just not for kids. And that was like my first introduction. I always joke that it's my brother who made me gay, and people are like, what are you talking about? I'm like, well, he showed me a harem anime with pretty goddesses and pretty outfits. If you've never, like, Oh My Goddess has a, like, they call it a reboot, but it wasn't really a reboot because it was the first full-length anime, but it never finished adapting the manga. But this was the OVA that came before it that is, it's really quite good. It has a very 90s ass dub. But that was my introduction, and like my brother had one of those like learn to draw manga books and like all that kind of stuff, and that was my introduction. And then when I would go to friends' houses, I would watch like Sailor Moon on 4Kids or whatever, and I would be like enthralled. And so when I hit like middle school, and this is gonna age me, when I hit like middle school and I had my own access to the internet and I had an iPod Touch, I decided, I was like, I loved watching Sailor Moon when I had the opportunity to as a kid, but I've never seen all of it. So I'm gonna watch all of it on my stupid iPod Touch, in 3 parts on YouTube. In middle school, I spent 2 whole summers watching all 200 episodes, not 300 episodes. Watching all 200 episodes, first in Japanese, then in dub. Although I mixed it up depending on what part you could find, you know? But I've seen it all, both, several times. And so I wasn't kind of like a lot of other people where I was watching Naruto and like stuff like that. I was kind of catching up. And then when I had a friend who, like many people, got me into Tumblr and that kind of thing, I was kind of a lapsed anime fan for a while. I got more into like your Super Hulock. That's why I have a fuck ass supernatural podcast. Like, I was into anime. I had various things, but I wasn't as in the fandom. I was kind of on the side. And then I was really big in Star Wars fandom. I had a Star Wars podcast, that kind of thing. And then into my 20s, basically, when I lost my job a couple years ago, when I worked at Nickelodeon, RIP, that shit sucked. Has ruined Avatar: The Last Airbender for me. We can't talk about that. I'll get too sad. But when I lost my job, I was like, I haven't watched current anime in years. And there's a lot of classic ones that I actually haven't seen that I want to spend time for. And so I did the Great Unemployment Anime Catch Up. And that's when I kind of got into Jujutsu Kaisen around like peak time around then. And I started making TikToks about that. And I really got into like anime TikTok around then. And then got into like more seasonal anime back towards what, I hadn't been before. And I was watching like classic ones that I hadn't seen before and that kind of thing. So a very weird journey, And because of those TikToks, now I work with a market research agency, which is the one that I do the newsletter with. It's like an industry review of anime and that kind of thing. So like it has always been a part of my life and I have always liked it. I've just gone back and forth on how involved I am in the mainstream fandom. That being said, like I was watching the first season of Attack on Titan when it was coming out, and I was watching it like I was in college, and we would have—
Me too. Yes.
We would have these watch parties in my friend's apartment. Like this is gonna be a real snapshot in time where we would watch the big weekly shows all together, and it was Attack on Titan, Game of Thrones, Hannibal, and Breaking Bad. And we would all watch them together, and he would bring in a lot of alcohol that we weren't supposed to have in the dorms. I didn't watch Breaking Bad at that point, but I watched Attack on Titan as well with it. Like, so I was in the fandoms, but I wasn't like as in it as some other people, if that makes sense.
No, I get
but now
it.
I am, and now I can say through experience a sentence no one has ever said, which is, I have had a more fun and safe experience in the anime fandom than I have with Star Wars fans.
Yeah, Star Wars fandom.
Don't. It's not
And
worth it.
it's funny that you mentioned like the Super Who lock thing, because I was on Tumblr, like peak Tumblr, but I was like on the anime and then just like regular life. Like I was using Tumblr ways I should not have been, like as my whole ass diary in high school.
We were sharing things we should not be sharing.
No, and it's funny because I deleted my main Tumblr a couple years ago because I was like, this could be war crimes. Like I can't have this evidence out here.
I should have. I changed my URL when I was like 28 or something, and people were mad at me, and I was like, I've had the same URL since I was 16, and before I didn't want to change it because it would break my old post, but they changed some stuff in the back end, so you can change it. And I was like, okay, I can finally change it, and people were like, we're mourning the end. I'm like, guys,
no, please. The Tumblr it's in that era, because I remember, like, I'm kind of like, I'll give stuff a try.
Yeah.
And I had seen like Doctor Who stuff. I was like, maybe I could get into Doctor Who. Spoiler alert, I could not.
It's British.
I'm
One
not
Piece.
like no. I was like, I don't know where to start. I think there was this other show that
Is it
that was
Merlin?
really the what?
Was it Merlin?
No, it was the one where the guy who ended up on Game of Thrones is on there. And it was like these kids that got like superpowers. It's also British. And they were like, and the guy who ended up on Umbrella Academy is on there too.
Oh my god.
It was huge.
It was huge on Tumblr.
It was like,
People,
it was huge
people
on
in the
Tumblr.
comments are going to be like, how do you not know? I'm just blanking. Also,
Yeah, no, but it was that show.
We're two millennials talking, and so when we say the peak era of Tumblr, we mean like 2010 to 2012.
Yes.
Not what some people are saying, like, oh, 2014 to 2020. No. 2010 to 2012. Like, when everybody moved to the MCU, that was the end of peak Tumblr.
Yeah, no, so yeah, those were scary times, and those like, I feel like if you survive, like, and it's funny because I ran a couple of Clamp fan blogs on Tumblr, and
oh my god,
I had this is so peak Tumblr. I had a confessions page where people would submit the confessions, and I would make graphics and post them about Clamp stuff.
Oh.
Yeah, and then I had I think I still have the URL for. I had the Church of Clamp. I was like, yeah, I was running Church of Clamp. I was like,
listen,
I was heavy in these streets.
I was active in the Voltron fandom on Tumblr.
Ooh, Voltron.
When people say how bad it was, I'm like, that's one of the only fandoms where I have witnessed stuff in person. I have 2 stories that have happened at New York Comic Con in person that have happened, and I was an adult by then. I was not one of the teen fans, whatever. And I wasn't that involved. I was just like reblogging stuff and whatever. But like, I always say, I'm like, my partner met me in the midst of Voltron fandom and then decided to stay with me for 8 years. I'm like, that's crazy.
Miracles happen.
Literally, our first date, I was like, we rescheduled it, and I was like, okay, well, a new season of Voltron comes out tonight, so I have to go.
Sorry, like,
what was wrong with me?
Nothing. And this is why you're still partnered 8 years. That's a great quality to have, actually.
Yeah.
I would be smitten by somebody that prioritizes their fandom over me. So like, I don't see, you didn't do anything wrong.
We had our first date in a comic book shop, and someone recognized me from Tumblr.
Oh,
worst thing to ever happen.
That's like, that happening in front of your parents. Like,
yeah.
that's akin to that.
I have worse. My dad, because my dad, he has a business. He's contracting and that kind of thing, and like his customers always like to talk to him too much. And he like mentioned how I was kind of famous online, like to somebody, because he noticed like their kid was like, you know, they were talking to him too much, whatever. And then like their kid knew me from Tumblr and mentioned it to my dad.
Nope. I would perish immediately.
I am literally the ghost of Christmas past to kids now, where I'm like, be online, do crazy stuff, just be anonymous about it. I have my full legal name out there.
Same. Listen. I don't know why, but that's the path that I chose.
Well, it was encouraged for our generation, because they were like, you can make your career out of this, whatever. And boy, was that the monkey's paw, but we can't get into that.
But that does lead me to, because you mentioned that you do work for the Anime by the Numbers newsletter, and that kind of came about from your TikTok.
Yeah.
How did that happen?
So like, I had already been in kind of a job transition in that time. Like when I got laid off from Nickelodeon, I was already in a job transition. I was trying to move into working in animation. I was over at Nickelodeon, and it really sucks because I met some really cool people and that kind of thing. And I was making TikToks basically like just for fun. I wasn't like doing it for money. I used to get some money. You don't get anymore. And there were some people I was connected with, like Twitter, LinkedIn, that kind of thing, that I had already like reached out to talk to. And one of them was Miles, who runs the company that I work for now, I freelance with. And he was like, oh, I already had wanted to reach out to you because I had seen a lot of your TikToks, so it's a good thing that we reached out, whatever. And I was like, oh, I just want to like chat, connect, whatever. And he was like, actually, I want you to work with me. And I was like, oh. I wasn't prepared for that, but awesome. Well, and he said like that he had watched my TikToks and he had recognized me from seeing me in other places, and then been like, oh, she's clearly coming at it from the perspective of somebody who works in the industry and not just like random anime fan online. And he was like, oh, like, and so it wasn't just like she made really good TikTok kind of thing. This is not something people can replicate. But it was more of like it's clear that she has other experience behind this kind of thing.
Yes.
It's also very strange because I worked in news and digital media and a lot of things for a long time when people introduced me as the TikTok girl, and I'm like, how did we get here?
It's so crazy because like when I met you at Anime NYC and I started following you like on Instagram, I had never looked up your TikTok, so I did see, some of like the entertainment critic stuff you do, and like I have you on LinkedIn. So I think like I organically found your TikTok, and I'm not really on TikTok, so that also is why I maybe hadn't come across you, was with the heated rivalry stuff. And I was like, oh, you are doing a whole big thing over here on TikTok. Like, I didn't even know. And then after that, because I interacted with that and I followed you, like, all your stuff. But I was like, I was always just seeing the BL stuff conversations. So that's so funny. Like, you have this whole other TikTok life.
Yeah. Well, and I started on TikTok as a Star Wars TikToker. Mm-hmm. And it was like, I had like a moderate following. I made a lot of friends in that community, whatever. But then, like, a lot of people fell off of it because there wasn't as much to talk about. And then I moved into anime and it blew up. And I was able to talk about other stuff, and because I talked about anime. Also, I have to apologize to the community. The reason that everybody is talking about Fujoing out about heated rivalry may be my fault. Because I posted a video that was just a picture. It wasn't even a video with text, like, before Heated Rivalry came out. And I was like, oh, it's going to be really good because the book is written by a fujoshi and the show is made by a gay man. That's, like, the best combination. And a bunch of people in the comments were like, what's a fujoshi? What's fujoing out? And then I was like, and then people were looking it up because of that. And then it started to go viral after that. And then there were articles and things. And I was like, I think this is my fault.
It is, but we love it. We love to see it, actually. I don't think it's a bad thing.
Yeah. And then people came back to the video and were like, girl, I think it was your fault. I was like, oh no, I'm sorry. I was just joking around. Which happens to me a lot.
It's not your fault that you predict the future and make things happen.
I even made a joke about, like, ship names, because you know how in ship names in BL, like, the order of them is very important. And I was like, oh, it should be, it shouldn't be Holinov, it should be the other way around, whatever. And people were like, we don't have those rules in the West, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, guys, I'm just joking. It's just a joke.
I watched Heated Rivalry and I loved it. Then I read the first book and immediately muted every freaking combination of anything ever in the history of life because it quickly spiraled into levels. And this is what happens when people who have never engaged in any type of fandom start engaging in fandom and acting weird. And I was like, wow, this was beautiful, the 0.2 seconds that I enjoyed you, and now I never want to see anything ever again.
I was like, sometimes you're like, oh, is it the adults, is it the kids, whatever. And I'm like, listen, every fandom goes through this cycle. It has to happen. Now it's just happening with people's real ass faces on TikTok or Instagram or wherever. And, back we were having the same dumbass arguments on Tumblr. And now I'm just like, okay, well, I'm not looking at that because I've seen all that before. We're good. And people are like, We've
played these games before.
Literally. And some people are like, this is literally baby's first fandom for some people. So I'm like, oh, okay. People are like, oh, is the fandom getting worse? I'm like, no, I watched this. Listen, the same shit that I saw in the Voltron fandom, that I saw in the Heated Rivalry fandom, I saw in the... Listen, I was on Tumblr, one of my first active Tumblr fandoms as something was airing, other than Sherlock, was The Legend of Korra. That was one of the most toxic experiences. I witnessed on my dashboard in real time Makora bottles. We're popping big bottles when Makora happens tomorrow. Like, I witnessed people switch over to being Korrasami shippers in real time. Like, I witnessed crazy toxic things, and I was like, yeah, this has all happened before. And also,
we've been here.
Yeah. And Sherlock especially, because it's very similar to Heated Rivalry in that there's not a lot of episodes, and so people speed through it really fast and then go insane. I'm like, yeah, we can tell. Yeah.
It's funny because I was not active in Sherlock, but I do remember, because when it gets to that level, like, it just leads everywhere.
Yeah,
like, it leaks out of containment and irregular normies. And I was like, what is happening in this show? Like, I don't know what this show's about.
But, like, if anybody who didn't experience it wants to get any sense of what the hell is happening, I think about the H. Bomber Guy video essay about why Sherlock was bad all the time. It is fantastic because, like, the experience of liking Sherlock was like baby's first media analysis of, like, I kind of like this, and then figuring out later of, like, oh wait, this thing might be kind of bad, but I don't know why. And it's also a really good video essay about why Stephen Moffat sucked, but we can't get into that.
Well, I love a video essay, especially about things that I don't know anything about.
It's
incredible. I will check that out. When we talk about an anime, I always start off by saying, like, my familiarity with the anime, and I actually am not that familiar with Trigun. I had seen yes, which is why I'm excited for you. I love when I don't know. Like, I love not knowing stuff. So I had the only Trigun thing that I had seen was maybe the anime that came out 2 years ago, like the newer one.
Yeah, the first season of the reboot that came out.
And I saw the first episode.
And that was it.
That's it. I only saw. I was like, "What's happening?" And I was like, I'll come back to this," and I never came back to it. So I just know like the character names, and that is it. So I'm excited for you to talk about Trigun. Like I mentioned in the intro, you immediately like want to talk about this anime, so I know how much you love it, and that makes me very excited. So what is Trigun?
Yeah. So, for context, also, I am also a bit of a newbie to Trigun as well. So, a lot of people know Trigun from the original anime that came out in the 90s because it was on Toonami. And the interesting thing about Trigun is that it was much more popular in the West than it ever was in Japan, which kind of makes sense because it has that more Western vibe. It's inspired by a lot of Western things, a lot of random ass Catholic imagery, that kind of thing. And so there's a lot of people who they remember Trigun because of the cool jazz music and all the stuff from like Toonami, whatever. I was not one of those people. I knew of it culturally. A cool fun fact is that it inspired Edward Elric from Full Metal Alchemist. Vash the Stampede was the original blonde hair, red coat, metal arm. Hiromu Arakawa was a big fan of Trigun. There is a Trigun, I think it's Trigun Multiple Bullets, where she did fan art of Vash from it. So it has inspired a lot of stuff, but it was very like not well known. And I had friends who had been asking me to watch it for years, and I was like, I don't know, like I am watching some older anime right now, but like I'm not gonna get into it, whatever. And my friend was like, no, you have to. And I was like, maybe I'll watch the reboot. And then when the reboot was coming out, there were people being kind of like shitty fans and being like, but it's not an exact adaptation, and it's not gonna be as good as the old one, so it's shitty, whatever. And I was like, I don't know if I'm gonna do it. And then eventually when I got into my like getting back into anime a couple of years ago, I was like, okay, I'm gonna do it. And it was right around when the new one started to come out, and I watched the original anime first. The original anime, I had the Wikipedia, came out in 98, and the manga started in 95. Okay. And I love to talk about it next to my other favorite, Sailor Moon, because it's like, yeah, there were two popular blonde bitches in the 90s. My popular blonde bitches in the 90s who have a very specific type of man, but also are bisexual. They're the same series, actually. Anyways, we can't get into that. But basically, I watched the original anime, and the thing about the original anime is that it's very good, but you can tell when they ran out of budget. And also, it's really all vibes. The story doesn't make any sense in the anime, which makes sense because the manga wasn't finished. And what was interesting was, a lot of times what they do when the manga isn't finished, in your Sailor Moons, your Narutos, your Full Metal Alchemists, is they spin off into another story. I don't think the production of Trigun had that kind of backing to be able to do that. So they finish it out with basically the same broad strokes as the manga, and because they were in conversation with the mangaka. And what's interesting, and one of the best parts of Trigun to me, is all its different adaptations and how different they are, but how very much in conversation they are with each other, which is very different from a lot of other manga and anime, right? They're either very strictly adaptation or whatever. And it's like, they all have about the same story beats. So like, I actually talked about this in one of my Trigun Discord servers. Like, we had a whole kind of discussion about like, how do you introduce somebody to Trigun? How were we introduced? Because some of us were newer fans like me, some of us were other people, and we agreed that like the 98 series is still the best way to introduce somebody because it introduces you to the vibes. You're not gonna understand what's going on like 90% of the time, but you're gonna be like, I love these characters, and there are scenes in it that are fantastic. You're not gonna understand, and that's fine. And it also does a very interesting choice that you've seen the first episode of the reboot, and the first episode of the reboot starts immediately with the whole stuff in space, and yes, the new one doesn't do that. The new one starts out with the Western vibe, is a bit episodic. There's little things of Trigun, is a Vash saving different people, that kind of thing, and it doesn't do that, and then it kind of breaks several episodes in, and you're on a spaceship, and you're like, what the hell? And it's really incredible. Both choices I think are valid, which is again the cool part about Trigun. But yeah, the experience of Trigun is one where you're seeing kind of the same story over and over again in different versions. And the other thing is that like a lot of these older anime, the anime like production designs, the voice acting, all this kind of stuff, it influenced the rest of the manga as well. which is really cool. And a lot of mangaka talk about that. Gei Akutami talks about that, how the things that the anime chose to do for JJK helped him finish, and like all this kind of stuff that happens all the time. But it's really cool. And I watched the original Trigun. I was like, oh, I really love these characters. How do I get more into this? Whatever. And then I started watching the reboot as it was airing. And a lot of people, and I got really into the fandom online, really into the fandom, because the fan art is good as hell. And I saw posts from people being like, you need to go read the manga. And the manga has been kind of out of print in English for a while. Now they have like the big nice editions from Dark Horse, but those ones kind of piss me off because they didn't do a retranslation and there's like typos in it, which is like, for something that big and that fancy, what the hell? But I read a really great fan translation called Trigun Ultimate that everyone should go read. And I read it and I was like, this is life-changing. Is it difficult to understand? Yes, but it's life-changing. And really, really gay. So gay. But to give people like the TLDR of what Trigun is about is, I would call it, it's literally a play on bringing a knife to a gunfight. So the whole thing is about Vash. He is, they are on a post-apocalyptic desert kind of vibe. They go more Western in the original anime. They go more half Western, half sci-fi sort of thing in the new anime. It's kind of both in the manga. And he is like an expert gunslinger, but the whole thing is that he doesn't want to kill people. He is an extreme pacifist. So if you like Avatar: Last Airbender, you will like Vash the Stampede. And if you love watching men who all they do is suffer. I don't want to spoil too much, but he's not human, which you find out soon. And also, the whole thing is that he's always on the run because he has a bounty on his head. And what you find out in the various versions is it's literally because he has a twin brother who's doing these crimes instead. He literally has an evil twin. And his evil twin's name is Knives Millions. This show has everything. There's a guy named Mid-Valley the Horn Freak, and you know what his weapon is? A saxophone.
Oh, okay.
The manga has a trans woman who shoots nails with her mind. She's in the new anime, but she's not a trans woman. She's a child. There's a lot there. There's a canonical character with DID in the manga. You don't have a lot of this in the. There's a non-binary bug character. There's a lot. But there's basically Vash is going around and he's trying to save people. And he's trying to, people are hunting him down for a bounty and he still won't kill them. And the central theme is about pacifism. What are the limits of pacifism, especially in like a post-apocalyptic environment? And the other characters who come in, Wolfwood, the biggest one, his boyfriend, love of my life, Nicholas D. Wolfwood, who has the anime curse of having a different skin tone in every single version. My king, where is your melanin? They stole his melanin. No. Every time they come out with a new plushie, I'm like, whose goddamn white baby is that? Yeah, it's so bad. Wolfwood is quite literally a Jesus metaphor. He's literally carrying his own cross. He has a gun that is a giant cross. Him and Vash are so homosexual, and when I say that, I don't have shipper goggles on, okay? When I tell you the way they meet, well, first of all, the way they meet is that they hit Wolfwood with their car. This is done in different ways in different versions, but it's literally the driving in my car right after. It's literally that. They're quite literally soulmates in every way, shape, or form. I can't even spoil too much of that because there's in every single version there's something so incredibly homosexual that you're like, what? Yeah, he's everything to me. And then there's the two female characters, which when I originally watched the original anime, I was like, oh, these women are fully clothed and treated well. Other women in the original anime, not so much. And this is another thing about the original anime that pisses me off, because they make Vash into this like 90s anime womanizer, which he's not in the manga at all, but a lot of people know him as that. So literally half the time I'll be watching and I'll just be like, hashtag not my Vash. That's not him. That's not Pookie. Okay. Not to say that he doesn't like flirt with people. He does. But he does some stuff in the original anime where you're like, ugh. That's not true to the character, okay? Don't listen. But these two women are also really important to the story. Meryl and Millie, they're very lesbians. They're very in lesbians. There's also a lot of bisexuality happening. There's a lot, okay? And they're a small girl with many guns and a big girl with a big gun, and it's incredible. It's incredible. I have no notes, truly. Except for that the new reboot version of Millie needs to be a little buffer. Love her, but she needs to have a little more muscle on her. But basically the whole thing is questions about morality. And it's also some of the most incredible Bible fan fiction I've ever watched.
Bible fan fiction.
It is. Like, the story of Vash and his brother it's very Cain and Abel. It's very Michael and Lucifer. There's so much biblical imagery, and then you get into it, and the reboot really leans into that stuff to the point where they even have like Knives reading the Bible and then misinterpreting it and that kind of thing. There's a lot of I think it has one of the best villains I've ever seen in fiction, which does the thing of like they do something bad and like you empathize with why they're the way they are, but then they are doing to other people what they or criticizing other people for doing, and that's the hypocrisy of it is what makes them the villain. Knives is an incredible villain. There's also a twink with blue hair who's obsessed with him named Legato Blue Summers. It's just an incredible series, okay? There's one guy named Monev the Gale, which is literally just that the mangaka was a fan of Venom and decided to switch the name around. Like, there's just such dumb bullshit. But, so you'll be like, this is the dumbest thing I've ever seen, and then you're like, I'm sobbing. This is, it does so Trigun, I like to call it, it's an experience. It's not just it's going to be a really different experience than you're going to have with other anime and manga. The manga can be hard to read sometimes, but is incredible and deals with some serious shit. But it is incredible. And then once you get into like the nitty gritty of it, it is crazy. And there's a lot of fighting right now about whether or not people like the reboot. I quite like it. I think one of its only downsides is the lack of melanin in some of the characters. Like Wolfwood, girl, where did his ethnic nose go? Where did his melanin go? But, you know, and also... But I do still think it's a really good adaptation and is doing some interesting new things. And they decided to, like, take ideas that the mangaka wasn't able to get to in the original story and expand on them in really interesting ways. And I think a lot of people have a lot of love for the original manga, especially people who've read it for the first time like me in the recent years and are like, oh, I wish they had adapted that, whatever. But I find it really interesting that, like, they decided to do something different and take a big risk. It's not without its problems, but it is really cool to me. Also, the music is really good. Knives and Vash are like they are the brothers of all time, you know. And I say this as a person who has a podcast about fucking Supernatural, okay, which is another Bible fan fiction about two brothers. So
you know, it's a theme with you. I'm seeing that. I'm picking up what you're putting down.
Yeah. There's also the memes are good. The fan fiction is incredible. The fan fiction is so good. At one time, I had 400 tabs of Vashwood fan fiction open on my phone.
Okay.
Yeah.
Who? Let me call somebody for help.
Yeah.
400 is a lot.
Yeah. Like those are my boys right there. Yeah. Like you don't know understand. Like listen. He says I wanted to spend my tomorrows with him. That's a canonical line.
That's a good line.
Yeah.
I like that. So,
anyways, so
yeah.
Yeah. What? I just talked about like, the entire fandom history of Trigun, but I don't even know how much of the plot I actually got into. The plot is a little different in everyone, but
I think we get the. You know, I think you did a great job.
Thank
we got
you.
the gist of it. So you watch the original anime, you like dive head into everything. What was that moment for you where you're like, this is my favorite, I'm locked in?
Yeah, I think it was about halfway through the original anime, because there were some episodes where I was kind of bored or kind of whatever, and then there were some episodes where there's one scene where after a certain character dies that I won't spoil, although when people are like, why did you spoil that? I'm like, well, the manga has been finished since 2007. But, and also, it's very clear that he was going to die, but okay. So, after a certain character who's very close to Vash dies, there is a scene where there's kind of a running bit that his favorite food is donuts. That's why also the music is called like The Last Donut, or I'm not saying that, whatever, but like when you first meet Millie and Meryl, they literally have donuts to give him to be like, hi, will you please like hang out with us? And he just is in a little town and he goes to get some donuts and he goes to eat them and then he just starts sobbing on a park bench and he has like a breakdown in public. And I've talked about this scene a lot where like the silly tone kind of goes away and it does this thing that anime does really well, and he just has like a full ass breakdown on this bench or whatever, and it's not only because he's lost someone important to him, but because he's being chased, because he's being forced to do things that are outside of his morals, all these kinds of things. And it's an incredible scene. Like, if you've ever like cried in a public park or on like public transportation, this is a very New Yorker thing, you will recognize this feeling where like everybody around him is just like having a good time. He's having a breakdown, and you don't really see him do that a lot because he's very like happy-go-lucky, even though he's hashtag going through it. And that was the moment where I was like, oh fuck, I kind of love this. And then there were a couple moments when I started reading the manga where I was like, oh, I love this. But yeah, I remember that scene specifically, being like, oh, actually I'm locked in.
I love crying. Like, crying scenes is the way to get me. Like, I love crying. First of all, I know that's an unpopular opinion, but I love crying. And I love those crying moments. Like, when people, especially in anime, they just have a way of doing crying
Yeah.
that I'm like, this is the most beautiful, heart-wrenching thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
So I can get that as someone who, like, the minute people are crying, I'm like, oh, I'm here. You've got me.
Also, I will say both the original anime and the reboot, whatever, incredible dubs on them. Johnny Young Bosch obviously plays Vash in both of them, but the dubs in general are like kind of legendary. They're very well known, so like you should watch it in the dub. And also because unlike in a lot of stories from Japan, they're not supposed to be speaking Japanese in the story. They're supposed to be speaking either English or something else, whatever, because of the nature of the series.
Like world, yeah.
Yeah, and so it's okay to watch it in whatever dub of whatever language you want to watch it in. I've watched the reboot in 3 languages because I also speak Spanish, so I watched the Spanish dub too. But yeah, when you talk about the crying scenes and whatever, I'm like, yeah, and they're just as good in the dub, let me tell you.
So you're into, you dived head into the Trigun fandom, like once you watched it. So what is something that you think like the general fandom or maybe the general Trigun community gets wrong, or there's like a misconception about the series?
Oh, that's so controversial.
Putting you in the hot seat.
Yeah, I think the biggest thing is the kind of arguments about whether or not a certain adaptation is good or, something's trash or whatever. I'm very much, and this is probably also because I work in the industry, I'm very much of the thing that I think every version has its merits, and I think that they're in conversation with each other, and I think that's beautiful, and that's part of what makes it cool. There's a lot of people who are like, Trigun Maximum, the manga is the peak, and there should have been an adaptation of that, and Stampede and Stargaze are trash, and it's, and this and that and the other thing, and I think people get a little too extreme with it. Not to say that things can't have criticisms, because they should, but that is the biggest thing. Like, people get really extreme with it, people get crazy about it. Especially people who, there's a segment of people who like grew up with the original, and then you'll see in every comment section people being like, oh, well, the the new one is trash or whatever. And I literally made a series of videos a couple years ago where I was like, actually, it's not trash. And I'm going to show you every manga panel that they turned into a wider story because they have the vision and you do not. Not to say I don't have my criticisms, because I do. But I had to be the defender. But yeah, I think that's the biggest thing, is that people really fight about the versions in a way that they don't as much with other anime. And it's kind of like the argument between like 03 Full Metal and Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood, but like worse. Mm-hmm. And yeah, I think, it can be a very difficult conversation to have that requires a lot of nuance that a lot of people, and just like having on Twitter and stuff, is not it's
not. And people are very, like, in this media age that we live in, people are very tied to like a certain piece of media is their identity. So like, if you don't like this specific adaptation, like, that is an attack on them as a person versus like a criticism on the show. And I haven't been like a victim of different adaptations, because like I saw Brotherhood. I never watched, like, I saw Brotherhood very late in life, and I haven't watched Trigun, but I haven't really been in a like fandom that has multiple adaptations. Sailor Moon, I guess, but I haven't watched Crystal. So, but I've seen these conversations, and it really, instead of being like, hey, this has its merits, it's like, no, this is trash. And it's like, okay, let's take it down. Take it down.
It gets to a point, and I'm so glad that I found kind of my niche of the fandom that I have fun with. Like, my Discord server that I'm in, we're all kind of in accordance of like, oh shit, 3 cakes. Ooh, I just hit my mic. Like, oh shit, 3 cakes. Awesome. Like, I got to see my bitches again. Yes. Am I upset that they turned Elendira, who was so fucking cool, into a child character in the new anime? Yeah, I'm pretty pissed. Am I pissed that Wolfwood doesn't have his melanin? Yeah, pretty pissed. Am I like, oh, really cool that they took a character who was white in the manga and they made her into a little black girl in the anime, and her, like, but like, she's very, very light skinned, and also there's some stuff like with her hairline and stuff where, black fans have been like, Orange, you could have done better with this. And like, there's certain things that I think could be better. But it's like, that to me is part of the beauty of it. And also, again, this might be because like you were talking about with Full Metal, like I came to it later in life than some people have had an attachment to it for a long time. I love it because of the ways that it's been able to inspire different amounts of the story. Even the terrible movie that I hate talking about, Badlands Rumble, which if you watch that, you have to watch the film because it has some of Vash and Wolfwood's gayest moments on screen. However, it also has Vash sexually harassing a woman for half the movie, which he had never does in any other, like, it's so out of character and such bullshit that you're like, what is this? And then there's other moments in the movie where you're like, why is Wolfwood wearing Vash's glasses because he thought Vash was dead? What's happening? So you just have to watch Badlands Rumble and go, okay, I'm gonna not count this as canon. Even though that movie was like the reason that Studio Orange was founded, and like, there's a lot, but yeah, I think that would be the biggest thing, is to just not hold any version as gospel. Even the mangaka doesn't. Like, he loves the new anime. He's been on all the panels about it. He was at Anime NYC. He's been interviewed about it. He live tweets about it all the time. Like, he has a lot of input into their reinterpretation of the characters. He's very, also the original anime is a Madhouse anime. So we wouldn't have Frieren without Trigun, so jot that down.
That's gonna be the takeaway from this episode.
Listen, if you like stories about immortal bitches being sad because they're gonna lose their human friends, before Frieren we had Trigun. I'm just saying.
So this actually then leads me to the other part of this question is, what is an opinion about Trigun that you have that you don't think, like, it's unpopular, you don't think anybody would agree with you? You know that meme where like you're standing and everybody's like pointing at you with knives? I think it's from Tangled.
Which is funny we say knives because it's about knives. And I don't think it's that popular of an unpopular opinion. So I'm going to talk about one of the more uncomfortable topics in the fandom, which is, unfortunately, I mentioned Supernatural before. I mentioned stories about brothers. You know what happens when there's stories about brothers in fandoms? You know what happens. So, and the whole thing with Vash and Knives is they're also twins. Even though they do that Japanese anime thing where they're very into who's the older brother, and you're like, you guys are twins, and you were also born out of a sack because you're plants. But like, okay. There's a lot there. But there is a lot of shipping of the brothers, which I don't enjoy. I'm very like, y'all have fun over there. I just don't want to see it. You know, I am of the mind of, I want to support your right for that to be posted online, whatever. We do have to have a conversation about the fact that if I just look up Trigun, that's the first fucking thing I see, unless I block half the fandom, which kind of sucks. 'Cause some of y'all are really good fan artists, but again, I don't want to criticize people. It's more of just like let's have a conversation, but we can't have that conversation because unfortunately we're dealing with censorship as a society.
Yeah.
So we can't have a more in-depth, nuanced conversation. So the interesting part, and it gets into some difficult stuff because you have what the fandom does and what people are doing as fans versus what's in the story, is that this isn't really that present in the original anime. It's in the manga, and it's definitely in the new one, is that Knives' obsession with his brother Vash is borderline incestuous. And not in a like, oh cool, I'm shipping them way, in a that's a part of the problem kind of way. That's a part of the commentary, to the point where there are certain things that he does in both the manga and the anime to Vash that could be construed as assault, and are at Vash and also to their sisters, the plants. And that's the point. That's the point in the story. There are a lot of very interesting points in the story about gender, about bodily autonomy is one of the biggest themes. A lot of people had canon Vash and Knives as being trans because all of the plants, which is what their species is, they're called plants, and all of the plants, it's a play on the fact that we have plants that give us life, and also there's like an industrial plant. It's both in this story, which is really cool. Everything is kind of a play on words, which is why you have bringing a knife to a gunfight. You know, you have a lot of things. But the thing about it is that like what is being done to the plants is there's a lot of imagery about the violation of female bodies, and a lot of times the Vash and Knives are the only male plants that we know of. They have this thing called independent plants, which is basically like these plants normally they live kind of like a hive mind, they live in these vats, there's this kind of thing, whatever, and there's not a lot of ones who kind of like independently walk around and are like regular people like Vash and his brother Knives. We in the manga, and I do think we will see it in the reboot, which we haven't seen them yet as we're recording, we do actually see other independents, and they are women. They are the only male ones, and so everyone's like, trans mask Vash and Knives. He's like the most trans character that there is, and the thing about how he is treated by his brother, how his brother treats the female plants, like there are some really big things, and it's not just about bodily autonomy. Like there is a scene in the reboot where it's kind of like a weird like alien impregnation kind of thing. There's a lot of lore and shit that goes into this, like you'll get it if you watch it kind of thing, and people really grossed out by it, and I was like, that's the point. Like, and it wasn't a lot of anime can go past the line of commentary into why the fuck is this here. It wasn't that, but it was very like, if you have your brain turned on and you watch it, there's clearly a point being made here, and the fact that Vash is included in that violation, in that whatever, and this thing that happens to him that is implied in the original anime, that is shown in the manga, but is very much as a big event in the reboot, is one of the biggest traumas of his life. Like, it's a big plot point that he loses his memory to block out this traumatic event and doesn't even realize that he is being blamed for a thing that happened because of the things that have been done to him. So what's interesting, I remember making a post about this in early Trigun fandom and having to take it down because people didn't get what I was saying, where I was like, I don't ship them. I think the whole problem is his incestuous obsession with his brother. That's like, you know, some people say that in the terms of like, and that's why I ship them. I'm like, no, that's not the point. And it's kind of a and both kind of situation. He sees them as one person. He has an obsession with only one person. He creates entire things so that he wants Vash to have the same values as him. And the fact that Vash has a completely different outlook on life and on humans and on other things is so wrong to him that it makes him into the villain that he is. And his incestuous obsession with him, which is also why, for fans of My Hero Academia in the audience, when people, when we finally found out the backstory for All for One and his brother, I was like, this is the plot of Trigun. I was like, holy shit. All for One. I was like, if you like the plot in My Hero Academia about All for One and his brother, and All for One's extremely, because that was a fight in My Hero Academia fandom where people were like, you know, Horikoshi made it pretty clear that his obsession with his brother was borderline incestuous. And that was a part of the commentary. And people didn't like that. And they were like, no, that's the whole point. And it's the same exact thing with Vash and Ives. And I think that's what makes it interesting. And it's a part of the major themes. There's a lot of cool themes in this story, because the story is more about different morals and different themes than about different characters, which I think is brought out by the fact that there are so many different versions of it. But one of them is about what obsession does to you, but also about bodily autonomy. Bodily autonomy in, you know, bodily autonomy from what society needs from you, bodily autonomy as a woman, bodily autonomy as a trans person. You could get into a whole thing about bodily autonomy with my good sis Wolfwood. But yeah, like, it gets very deep. It also gets very serious. I mean, if you want to put, like, a content warning on this, like, because I will say, like, before you read the manga and stuff, like, there are some very serious things, like pedophilia and stuff that are covered in the manga in a very, actually, quite tasteful way. Not in, like, we're showing this because it's edgy, but, like, this is a bad thing that happened, and it's a part of the whole morality play of, like, and what do we do about this thing? But yeah, that's my most controversial take, that I'm like, well, that's a part of the story. That's a part of the thing. And it's not, when people say, like, you know, oh, you shouldn't say that, whatever. I'm like, no, that's a part of why he's gross.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and it's not in, like, an anime. You know how there's anime that will always have, like, that one brother character that's a little too weird about it? I would say, you know, I always defend Spy Family, because I'm always like, well, Yuri Breyer being like that, and his obsession with his sister, making him literally become a part of the surveillance state. There's a point being made there, actually. That is it. There's a reason for that. There's a point being made there. About the connection between, you know, misogyny and obsession and the surveillance state. Like, there's a point being made there. But, like, most of the time, yeah, incest there's no reason for it in anime. But in Trigun, it's more implied if you have your thinking goggles on, and it's part of the horror of it all. Yeah, there's a lot of body horror actually in Trigun, especially in the manga. But yeah, I think that's my hottest take. I hope the girls don't come for me when I say that.
I mean, I get it. I feel like we have divulged to this place, or we've gotten to this place where it's like this bad thing, and like, that's it. You can't explore it further. You can't explain it, because all of a sudden you're justifying it, or like, you having any nuance of it is like you automatically supporting it in real life.
Yeah.
And it's like a lot of conversations get truncated, and a lot of conversations like that could really be meaningful and, you know, get to a place, because I haven't seen Spy Family, and I obviously haven't seen Trigun, but when you are mentioning this, I am thinking about in other instances where, you know, there's incest, or like they call it like brother con, sister con, like and it's like you know, it's not in there to be edgy, like there's a point being made, but it's like,
yeah,
people just blanket incest bad, and you can't have any type of conversation.
Yeah.
You can't say like, this is happening for this reason.
And it's like, I get why. I get why, because like, if it's a trope that is so prevalent in something like anime, I get why you immediately see it and you're like, oh, brother. Like, I've done it, right? Like, I know that Dandadan is a really good series, and everybody has recommended it to me, and I know that normally I would watch it. I just don't know if I can sit through another, and I know that the stuff that happens with the female characters is a commentary. It is a commentary on how Japan treats young girls. It is a whatever. I just don't know if personally I can sit through another series that's very like Evangelion, where it's like, we're towing the line between it getting too gross and it being a commentary, and sometimes the line is not good. But that's my personal choice. And also just I can't get into another shonen. I can't do more shonen. I have to stop. That's me with Gachi Akuda. I know, well, actually that was a conversation I had with Gachi Akuda. I know that they handled a really tough storyline about this kind of thing, and they did it really well. It's possible that, but I just can't watch it because I can't get into another shonen, even though I know it's really, really good. So like I tell other people to watch it, but I'm like, I can't.
It's not for you right now.
Yeah, I'm a woman in my 30s. I can't do it. I can't learn another power system, please.
Yeah, no, I get it.
You know, and
I'm there.
There's also, we're in the shoujo renaissance, but we can't get into that. I also say Trigun is a seinen. It has always been a seinen. Just keep that in mind. For people, it is very, very dark. And in all of the adaptations as well, there is an episode about Wolfwood in the reboot that is really hard to watch. It's incredibly well done, but it's a hard watch. But yeah, I think it's hard to have these conversations, especially when it's done in an artful way and people are, it's like, I get the knee-jerk reaction. I do. I get it. But also it's like, come on, guys. We gotta grow up.
Right. Yeah. No, I get that too. But this is perfectly leading me into the next question that I have for you, because obviously I didn't know anything about Trigun, and you're saying stuff to me and I'm like, wow, that's crazy. This is all the same show. But it makes all these commentaries, and it has a lot of different elements. When you think about Trigun as a whole, from everything that you know, what do you think is the legacy that Trigun has left behind and is currently leaving behind, because there's a new iteration of it?
That I love that question, because a lot of people, especially in the anime fandom, don't realize the influence that it had. Like I mentioned, that it was a big influence on Full Metal Alchemist. It has also had a lot of influences that people don't realize, because much like a lot of people will think that it's just Cowboy Bebop, and you're like, no, that's actually a whole genre. I wrote an article one time where I said that Trigun was better than Cowboy Bebop. I don't actually think that. I just wanted to get clickbait out of people, but it did piss people off. But it has a lot of impact on people who, it has had a lot of different impact on other pieces of media. The music has, and now with the new one, there's also like a concrete effect that it has had, because Orange had to like develop, they spent years developing the first season. They had to develop new technologies to be able to render the faces in a better way than, you know, and they've already done great work on things like Land of the Lustrous and Beastars and all this kind of stuff. But like people really noticed the leg up in quality that they had, because the nature of the story is that there's a lot of silly to it, and a lot of it is about Vash's faces and a lot of the stuff that they do, and they had to learn how to do that in CG in a way that really only like Western CG animation was doing, that they had to kind of change their processes. And that's the kind of cool thing, is that it is kind of, it's always been on the cutting edge, even if people don't realize it. And it has an effect on the rest of the industry. Like, what's the other CG? There's another CG anime that people were like, oh, they're making like new stuff for this, whatever. But like, you know, we wouldn't have Beastars without Trigun. We wouldn't have certain things without it. And I admire a lot of the work that Studio Orange does, even if I have certain criticisms of certain things. Yeah, I think people don't realize the oh well, and there's also the funny ones, like the fact that it was a Trigun fan who recommended This Is How You Lose the Time War. Everybody remembers Bigless Dickless. Like that was a big moment for Trigun fans. I was like, what's happening? This was a huge moment when people in publishing were asking what Trigun was, and I was like, it's my time.
There's like, I'm here. I'm ready. Put me in, coach.
And I was like, I'll explain who Nicholas Wolfwood is and why, yes, he does canonically have a big dick. I can prove it to you. Like, it was a crazy time. But, like, people don't usually realize how big of an effect it has on things, and also how it's definitely been influenced by other things before. I always make the point of how similar it is to Sailor Moon, because there's also a little fuck ass cat. My profile picture on all of my social media is the little fuck ass cat, Kuroneko-sama, who is actually kind of a signature of the mangaka. He puts that cat in all of his manga as like a little thing. And she does show up in the reboot. She's just a little hidden. And it's like, yeah, I'm like, they're blonde. They're actually from space. They like a brunette. They're bisexual. They have angel feathers at one point. They have a fuck ass cat. They both like to get a little silly with it. They both like sweets. I was like, they're the same character.
You know what? I see it.
Yeah, and I'm like, everybody knows the influences that Sailor Moon has had, but my girl Vash, yeah. So the answer to that question is like there's tangible effects, but there's also other ones. Also, like, a lot of people, there was a very funny meme that there were a lot of artists who got into Trigun when the new one came out, and they were like, I had an art block, and then I met Vash the Stampede, and I couldn't stop drawing. It was like Trigun, and then there was something else that came out recently that people were like, I don't know, it broke me out. Like, there were so many people who like got back in the game to draw Trigun fan art. That joke that people have about how there's certain fandoms that inspire like Renaissance ass painting.
Yeah.
You'll see the fan art for Trigun, and you'll be like, this is some of the best Catholic fan fiction I've ever seen. And then you watch the show and they're like making a dumbass joke, and you're like, where'd they get this from? But then you'll see other episodes and you'll be like, oh, I get it.
You're like, okay,
yeah.
It makes sense.
Yeah.
I love that. I mean, I feel like once you like watch something that's like been in the canon for years, and you're like, I get where this is from, and like that's always been kind of my favorite part of getting into media. Like, at different times, it's like, I finally get that one joke from 2012.
Yeah, when you finally watch Akira and you're like, I see it.
Oh, that's why everyone. Yeah, you're like, okay, this makes sense. So, as we come to the end, the question that I like to end on: when you think about your personal experience with Trigun, how has Trigun impacted you or impacted your life?
I think it came to me at a pretty difficult part of my life, and it's been a really overall positive experience for me. I mean, and that might just be because when I came to it, I was older, wiser, knew how to handle fandoms better. But, I was in a pretty awful place when I got laid off, and I was watching a lot of anime. I did I'm going to watch Neon Genesis Evangelion for the first time when I'm unemployed. Girl. And Devilman Crybaby.
I haven't watched that yet. I haven't been in the headspace for that.
Girl. It was a great experience. Cried. Loved it. Whatever. Why'd I do it then? And then when I got into Trigun, I haven't been able to kind of fully immerse myself in a fandom like that in a really long time, and in a way that doesn't feel soul-sucking, because as I've moved into anime, I've just had a much more fun time than I had being an MCU fan, being a Star Wars fan. It's not just the fandoms that's the problem, it's also the corporations that run this kind of thing. And not to say we don't have that problem with anime, we do. The problems are just different. But it's been really refreshing, I think, because there's such artistic I don't know what the word, motivation behind it, that I've been able to like engage with it in a very like genuine way, and it's just been really nice for me. Also, there's something about the doomed yaoi of it all that, like, those memes where they're like, what are we gonna, how do you get through the day without drugs? And I'm like, doomed yaoi, obviously.
Of course. That's my hit.
Yeah. That's how I get through the day. And I've like met cool people through it and that kind of thing. I mean, I have through a lot of different fandoms. But like, I think it was the catalyst for me getting back into anime fandom in a much healthier way than my other, and again, might have just been at the point. But it was great for me at that time in my life. And I think also it has a lot of interesting things to say that I needed to hear at that point in my life. Not to say that there weren't other ones that haven't, because I could go into that, but it's just been a really fun thing to be a part of, and thing to engage with as a creative person also. Like, my whole job, my whole thing is storytelling and adaptations of storytelling and how our stories told, whatever. So like, this is like catnip to me, where it was like, you know, what if we had all these different versions of this story and all of them were equally cool, and it wasn't just like, oh, Brotherhood's better, you know what I mean?
Right.
Kind of thing. And that's also why I got into Jujutsu Kaisen, whatever, because it's a shonen, but it has a lot of deeper stuff, and I loved getting into the part of the fandom that would be like, here's some extra things that are lost in translation and stuff like that, that I'm like, oh, I find that really cool. I find the extra meaning to it really cool, and a way to engage in fandom that is not, you know, endless consumerism. Because, like,
Right.
my house is covered in Star Wars stuff. I love Star Wars, but she is an X to me because, like, yeah, when I went to Disney World and Disneyland, and I saw the Millennium Falcon for the first time, there's a video of me crying for sure. But I also am like embarrassed by Star Wars now, and I haven't had that genuine feeling about something in a while. Also, Star Wars very much influenced Trigun. Just saying. There's a lot of influence from Star Wars that once you see it, you never unsee it. And then also he's talked about the mangaka. There's technically 5 moons on Gunsmoke, but obviously they're influenced by the 2 moons, but I won't get into it. But anyways, yeah, it's just been a nice thing for me personally. And it also, like, not just for reasons of, like, I still have my disagreements with it. Like, the ending of the manga pisses me off. But that's also because, you know, the idea of he keeps living his immortal life and he's kind of alone and nothing really changes, but some stuff did change. I'm like, no, he doesn't get to be happy. This sucks. Like, I was like, you know, I still think it has a lot of meaning, but it still pisses me off. And that's the conversation people are having right now about, like, Yuji and Modolo and, like, stuff like that. And it's like, you know, it's the premise of Frieren and all this kind of stuff. And, like, you know, but it still has a lot of meaning for me, even if I have disagreements with it.
Well, I love that. And I think what really has resonated with me is what you said about participating in fandom in a way that isn't consumeristic.
Yeah.
Because that's something that personally I have. I mean, obviously I too like spending money on boy love and stuff. But it is something that I feel like, blame it maybe like on anime, TikTok and stuff, where there was a really big period on like spending money to be
All about
like
collecting.
collecting. And even like I stopped doing a lot of different like content because I was like, to me it isn't about buying this. I mean, I will buy and support artists and mangaka, but to me it's not like, oh, look at this, every single JJK like manga that I have or things like that. So I really appreciate that. I'm glad that like Trigun was able to be all of these things for you. And that's why I always feel like, I always tell people, like, I will watch things when it like it's meant to be. Like, I do find that like I'm that woo woo aspect, because I do think like sometimes like what you said, like messages need to hit you at a certain time when you're ready to receive them. So I love that. And I'm so glad that you came on to my show to talk to me about Trigun, something that you love. And I'm telling you, I did not expect half of the things that came out of your mouth. So I am completely blown away. Like I said, I might go back to the reboot, since you did mention that.
Yeah. I do have a suggested order for people if they want to get into Trigun.
Okay, what is that?
It is watch the original anime, because then you get like the vibes. You can watch the terrible movie if you want, Badlands Rumble. You don't have to, but if you want the gay moments, you can. Just know that that's #NotMyBash. Then read the manga. Just letting people know that the first 2 volumes of the manga were called Trigun, and then it switched magazines, and then the rest is called Trigun Maximum. It's very confusing. If you just look up the Trigun Ultimate thing, you can just read it straight through. Again, with the manga, they're going to throw a lot at you, and half the time you're going to be like, who's speaking? But it's going to be peak, and you're going to love it. And then watch the reboot. The whole first season is called Trigun Stampede. The second season is airing right now, Trigun Stargaze. Some people might watch the original. This is just personal taste, but some people might watch the original and not vibe with 90s style, and might need to watch the reboot instead to get into it. That's just a personal taste, but this has worked for like most people. But I usually just give that caveat of like, if you're not vibing with 98, totally fine. That's like a personal thing. You could just switch over to the reboot, and then if that's more your speed, then you go back to it later. I've seen people do it either way, but like that's been what has worked for most people. Yeah, that's my Trigun recommendation. And if it doesn't work for you, then you just need to see the value of Polygon. Which is all for Meryl, Millie, Wolfwood, and Vash all shipped together. Because I have a big mind.
Oh, well, I will leave it to it then. And as we end, is there anything that you would like to promote, where people can find you, where people can get any more of you, and if you have any projects or anything coming up that you would like to share?
Yeah. So on the anime front, obviously, I co-produce the Anime by the Numbers newsletter, and it's more of an industry newsletter, but I think it's really valuable for fans because then you can like kind of find out the reasons behind stuff. And there's some stuff that's behind a paywall, but not everything, so you can subscribe to the free version and you'll still get a lot of stuff. It's mostly my boss writing it and me editing it when I can get him around to writing. And that's like on Substack. You can just look up Anime by the Numbers. I'm sure you're gonna put stuff in the description as well. The other thing is I have a podcast with my best friend called the Mystery Spotcast that the premise is that we don't think you should watch Supernatural. We think it's a dumb show, but unfortunately it came to us at a time in our lives where it was very formative. So we have decided for some fucking reason to rewatch all of it and then just recap it in a show. So like if you only know Supernatural through cultural osmosis, great, then this is the show for you. Or if you know Supernatural very well, or if you just want to like, because it eventually becomes us recapping the show, but also talking about media in general and like through the lens of this dumbass procedural. And we know way too much about this stupid fucking show and its dumb fandom, and our love-hate relationship with it. But yeah, it is for anybody if you know nothing about it and you just know about the Destiel meme on Tumblr and you're like, why is it like that? Like, we'll explain it to you. We're on, all the podcast platforms. We're on a hiatus right now, but we'll be back soon. It's not like a permanent hiatus. It's like, we'll be back soon. But yeah, that's my thing. I'm on TikTok, Instagram, Blue Sky, a little bit on Twitter, but I usually just use that to retweet Bashwood fan art. Literally that's the only reason I'm there, with all the same handle, which is my name misspelled, Klaudia says. But yeah, that's all I have to plug right now.
Well, and like you said, I will have all the links to everything in the description of this episode. So thank you so much for coming on. This was so much fun.